In 1971, a family moved into a quiet farmhouse in rural Rhode Island. 14 rooms, 300 years of history. And according to them, they weren't alone.
They heard footsteps in empty halls, doors opening by themselves, beds shaking in the middle of the night, and a woman who may or may not have hated their mother.
The family would live with whatever was inside that house for almost 10 years.
Their story became one of the most famous haunted house cases in America. It inspired books, documentaries, and eventually one of the biggest horror movies ever made.
But here's the problem. The movie only told part of the story.
The real history of the house is darker, it's weirder, and way more complicated.
So tonight, we're reopening the full case file. The history of the land, the haunting itself, what investigators say really happened, and why skeptics believe the story may not be what people think.
This is the true story of the Perron family haunting.
And welcome to Deceptive Reality.
This may be one of the stories that is completely confusing depending on who is telling the story, only because there's so many different concepts and ideas and ways that people told this story. And honestly, most of you probably know this story from the movie The Conjuring, which we're going to be covering some of the stuff that's in that too. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on with this house right now. And I said, you know what? We need to kind of cover so people understand the history of the house and stuff. So we're going to be covering everything from what really happened, what the family said happened. We're going to talk about some of the folklore, and because that's the fun stuff. And then we're going to look at, from a skeptical point of view, kind of what skeptics say, what the believers do. And then I got my favorite part, the fringe stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to give me a tinfoil hat. I'm telling you. I need one.
That should be part of the act here.
It should be.
Put on your tinfoil hats, folks.
So when we talked about this story, Nick, obviously you've seen the Conjuring movie, right?
Oh, yeah. I love those movies.
It's a great movie.
Fantastic.
Did you know the full story before we did like the actual deep dive?
Honestly, before we did the deep dive, I thought that the full story was what was presented in the movies themselves.
Cool.
And it comes in that is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
That this is like learning a whole new, this is like a whole other story, which is exciting too, because it's different in almost every way.
It is. And, you know, I think at least to start this anyway, I think we kind of need to tell what's happening, at least in the beginning. So for anyone that doesn't know the true story, and we're going to try to stick as close to the truth as we can. In January of 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron, they moved their family into an old farmhouse in rural village of Harrisville, which is in Rhode Island. They had 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. And the interesting thing about this house, I don't know, I guess in the Conjuring movie, I kind of thought this house was big. I didn't understand how big this house was.
Right. For anyone wondering, by the way, we'll cover this a bit later, I think, but there was lawsuits on this. But the house never appeared in a single frame of the movie.
It doesn't really look like the house that the original house is. It kind of looks vastly different. I mean, kind of the same.
I think they would have had a lot of trouble shooting there. Like they needed something they could probably take apart, remove the fourth wall.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And they're definitely not going to let them do it there.
No.
Plus, I've heard, and I don't know if we'll cover this or not, that it has a lot of power problems and fluctuations, which would not be good.
That was definitely
for Hollywood equipment.
It was part of our stuff, but I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be important enough. I mean, we can probably cover some of it. Because honestly, this story's a kind of a long one. I was kind of shocked with all the stuff that really happened. Andrea Perron, she wrote a series of books on this haunting. It's like, wow, okay, well, there's a lot to it. The previous owner, this is an interesting part of the story. His name was Mr. Kenyon, not to be confused with Paul Kenyon that I know.
Oh, when you say that name, that's what I thought.
That's what I think too. It's crazy. Oh, Paul over here, man. He was a previous man there.
He's a mover and a shaker.
You're only going to haunted locations, Paul. Good night. Well, according to the Perron family, when they took possession of the house, Kenyon offered Roger, which was the dad, one piece of advice. And supposedly the way he said it was not dramatic. He didn't even really explain what he meant, but he simply said, leave the lights on at night.
Now, would you take that as threatening or scary, or would you just be like,
I was going to ask you the same question, honestly. And this is the way I thought about it. It's 1970s. And if you've looked at the actual floor plan for that house,
right.
That house is not the simplest to navigate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken it like a haunting thing, just moving in. I would have taken it from a standpoint of, hey, there's probably a lot of blind spot areas and there's kids in the house. Right. And hey, you don't want them to fall down this stairway or whatever it may be.
Right.
That's how I would have taken it.
My previous house was a very old house. It was once a stagecoach stop before it was rebuilt after it burnt down. And I had to have sort of like floor lighting at some points, because if you got up in the middle of the night, you could run into something. I used to have an old big iron sweetheart stove that was just prime for stubbing your toes on.
Yeah.
And I didn't have 14 rooms like these guys have.
You know, something interesting is Andrea Perron, later she just described that warning that he gave.
Right.
Regardless of what he meant. She said that was in her opinion, she described it as a pivotal warning, suggesting the man who sold the house may have known that there was something wrong with it.
Right. Right.
The first disturbances, it wasn't, I don't think, what a lot of people would really expect, because when you hear about the Conjuring house or even the Perron family haunting, you know, you think they were under siege from the first moment they stepped in the house, but that's not really the case.
Not the case. You know, it's often not the case. These things ramp up. Like and I'm not saying this is it, but we've looked at a lot of demonic cases.
Yes.
And they start with the smallest things. And I think in this case, it was a broom moving around.
Yes, that was the big part of it, because in the very beginning, I think most of the family was just kind of dismissing what was happening. They're like, just being absent-minded. You're just moving in. And think about it. When you first move in, you may go, I'm going to put this here. This will be a great spot for it. And then later could be like, where the heck did I put that at? And then later you're like, that's a horrible place to put something.
I know.
So,
that can happen to me in the space of an hour.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it happens all the time. But what you were talking about is a broom was in the kitchen, and it would never stay there. And that's exactly where Carolyn would leave it. So a lot of times when they talk about Carolyn, they believe the first things that happened was with Carolyn. But this broom, sometimes it would disappear. Sometimes it seems like it would move from floor to floor. So it wasn't staying in, like, even on the same floor. And the sounds, they were always kind of small. But they kept happening in room after room, and no one could really explain what was going on. But also, one of the interesting things, and I always thought this had something to do with the broom, they would find these little piles of dirt.
I was hoping you'd mention that.
Yeah.
In my head, I imagine that this ghost is like some lady that used to take care of the house, and she's doing the sweeping into little piles.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if let's take ghosts out of it.
Right.
You just move into a spot. You got this broom. The broom's missing. You go to get the broom's missing. All of a sudden you find it, but you find this little dirt pile. There's 5 girls. There's Roger and there's Carolyn. My first assumption would be, okay, cool. They moved the broom, but at least, hey, they cleaned up this spot right here.
Yeah, they started sweeping, right?
That's why it's gone. Good. It's not in the same spot.
And you know, not to diss modern folks, but back in those days, I think kids were more keen to help out on that kind of stuff. Like, they had chores and duties to try and earn their little bit of allowance money.
The other interesting thing is inside the kitchen, they started noticing scraping noises. It's almost like it was metal against metal. It was like, I think what they phrased it as is like something was being like dragging, I think it was like a tea kettle or something like that.
Mhm.
But there was never anyone in the room. And when I was thinking about that, I'm like, man, like if I was in the kitchen, I heard something like that, I don't know what I would think because,
Right.
you know, it's not like it's a pipe. Like, you know what sound a
Mhm.
pipe makes, you know, when a
Yeah.
house is settling, what that makes, but
Mhm.
like a metal on metal noise, like it's
Right.
kind of weird.
I'll tell you, nothing scares me in the middle of the night more than hearing a noise that I haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've lived here so long now, like I know every sound that typically happens. And I bought an ice maker recently, and in the middle of the night, sometimes the ice will fall down. And the first few times that happened, just about jumped me out of my skin. If I heard metal scraping on metal out in the kitchen when I was laying in bed,
Yeah.
I'd be terrified.
Oh, for sure.
Imagine this from the point of view where weird and somewhat disturbing things have been happening,
Right.
and you're kind of on edge, and then all of a sudden you hear a new noise.
Right.
Metal scraping on metal usually isn't something that happens right easily, so that's something that a little bit of force behind it.
See, I bet to a degree, they probably didn't even think of anything being anything yet until there's a sound that they can't really place. Like I know
Right.
Carolyn was the first one to kind of, I think in what I read, she was the first one to kind of acknowledge what was going on. And she was noticing strange acoustics inside the farmhouse, sounds that were almost amplified in cases when she thought it really should have been muffled,
Right.
and sounds that would vanish and then go from room to different rooms. So at first she was even questioning herself, which is what I would do. Well, maybe I'm tired. You know, I worked all day. I've been cleaning these houses. I got these 5 kids. Like I'm so done with today. I'm done. But for her, after a while, that's kind of hard to just say, oh, it's me.
First 3 times, maybe.
Right. But then she started saying she started feeling like an oppressive chill. So it wasn't a draft, because you got to remember this house at that point in time was 235 years old. So it's going to be a little drafty, but it's almost like I hear people talk about it all the time. It almost feels like a cold spot, in which when we did our investigation in September, I don't really remember having any cold spots there that I acknowledged anyway.
There was one moment where you did experience that, and that's where you were in Tommy's room.
You're right.
That's the only time.
Wait a second. I'm just now piecing that together. I forgot about that till you said it.
Right.
Did I acknowledge that on my left-hand side?
Yes.
Which is where that shadow went.
Right, exactly.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that till you just said that. I didn't even put that in our video.
I thought that you knew that because we talked about that.
No.
Remember we had the discussion where you were like, I didn't want to say something and interfere with the moment. So you didn't tell us till afterwards.
You're right. I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of that until you just said that. Yeah. It's kind of like when when you and I was talking about we said, you know, we don't have proof of where your hands were. And you're like, wait, my hands were full. And then but he was like, oh, wait, I was taking a video then.
Yeah, now we know.
Yeah, it's like you don't even think about that stuff in the moment because it was such a shocking revelation to us that it didn't even get pieced together. I forgot all about that until just now.
Yeah. And I'll bet the Perrons went through a lot of that too.
Oh, yeah.
Like when they look back, they're like, this started way before we thought it did. I'll guarantee they went through that.
Absolutely. I don't know. And to a degree, you know, I hear people talk about it all the time. Like when you experience some of these cold chills and stuff like that, they often will say there's like an oppressive feeling. And the way I've always thought of that is, you know, theory, I think, that goes behind it is that the atmosphere inside of a room changes. And by atmosphere, I don't mean theatrical, dramatic atmosphere. I'm talking like
not like smoke coming in from the floors. And stuff.
I'm talking like actual atmosphere, like a barometer. If you put a barometer inside the room, like a lot of people say they get clammy. And honestly, I just think that's some type of a change in humidity. It'd be nice if there was devices that measured that. You know, just saying.
Yeah, would be nice.
But
make $1 million.
Oh yeah, buku cash.
Right.
But you know, for her, she had talked about that. But later accounts from the very beginning, she felt like the house was affecting her physically because she started talking about chronic pains in her joints. And at first, she kind of blamed it on just the fact that, in which I've experienced this before, the stress of moving, you know, you already have, because I think what a lot of people doesn't necessarily know, another part of the story that is told a lot, which is not necessarily true. In fact, I know it's not true, but they talk about the dog when they get there, and the dog, whose name is Bathsheba. You're going to hear that name again here in the near future.
That's going to be important. Pay attention. Bathsheba the dog.
Bathsheba the dog. They talk about how the dog didn't want to go into the actual house. Was that in the movie? Was that in The Conjuring?
I don't think so. But let's set this up as kind of a funny thing. Hey, Bert, why didn't the dog want to go into the house?
Because it was not alive. It was not there for the house.
Years.
Yeah, it was gone. Andrea Perron is actually who mentioned that, because the story is always told, and she goes, it'd be hard for the dog Bathsheba to have not wanted to go in the house, because one of the big reasons that we wanted to move from the city was our dog got hit. But Bathsheba is going to be a very important name that we're going to be talking about too in the near future. But I thought that was kind of weird. But one of the first true encounters that they had was with a tall woman. And the tall woman was always seen in the morning. And it was never, you know, like I think even in our investigation, I said, hey, I see something out the corner of my eye. It was never a case like that. Carolyn always saw this woman. And she would later describe it as one of the most unsettling things that she had ever seen.
What was unsettling about it?
We can jump right into that if you want to, because there's...
Well, if you want to delay it a little bit, we can too.
Well, the only reason why I say that is there's going to be a lot of different, which is going to disappoint a lot of people, because I think in the movie, there was only one entity, but in reality, they don't believe that's the case. So if you came here hoping to hear about Bathsheba Sherman and she was the witch and all that, you're going to not enjoy this part of the story.
Well, you're going to hear a lot about Bathsheba Sherman.
For sure.
But it's not going to be what you expect. This is where we turn it on the head and get back to reality a little bit.
Correct. Even if reality is deceptive.
He said the thing.
But yeah, that we're going to be covering all the entities, and I think there's definitely a part of that. But even like the girls was having encounters also. And at first, just for full transparency, in the very beginning, none of these things that they were seeing was dangerous in any regard. It wasn't like it was a case where people were in duress. But some of the daughters believed that there was a certain presence inside the house that was harmless. In some occasions, even friendly. So April, the youngest, she reported speaking to a spirit that she called Oliver Richardson.
Interesting name for a kid to just come up with.
Correct. And that was a young boy that she seemed to almost regard casually, almost like a lot of people would say a invisible friend.
Right.
You know, a lot of kids will have those. But she would almost, to a degree, speak to it just like it was an imaginary friend inside the house. But even in the early days, the house, it was already changing for the family. So as time was going on, the big thing was, and we've talked about this in numerous hauntings, objects would just vanish.
Right.
And much like in those other stories, And I think this even happened in our Jeff the Mongoose, I'm kind of scared to say that name, episode.
I know, right?
But people started blaming other people for things that was vanishing.
Yeah, actually, in another story we did that turned out to be a horrible human being doing these things. Right. Do you remember the guy that was hiding in the walls and just coming out and taking stuff to blame the other family members?
Correct. We've covered a lot of great stories. You need to go back in our portfolio of videos. But yeah, this always seems to come up. But this was kind of the case. You know, someone would go, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. I would go to find something that I put somewhere and I'd be like, who took this? You know, who's lying? You're lying. I know you know where this is. I've seen you take it before. Right. And that's, to a degree, it's like, is that just like something, this is just me speaking candidly, but is this like a demonic thing where it's trying to get people in the wrong frame of mind and go against each other?
Like sowing discord amongst normally loving family members?
Kinda.
Be a good way to start when your power's just building up.
Correct. Because, you know, we always talk about this. This is always a theory, but these things have to feed off of something. It's even like when I did my interview with Chris McKinnell, he talked about how some of these things will just feed off of whatever it can get. And, you know, the biggest one's obviously fear, but in the beginning, there might not be any fear. Like people are just chalking it up to, well, clearly this was moved or whatever, but I don't know.
I mean, anger is a common side effect of fear. In fact, some people say that all anger is caused by fear of something. So that could be the little snack it uses to build up its energy. So it just moves things around, maybe frames someone, puts it in their room. You know, that could happen.
Absolutely. You know, I thought it was funny though, because, and we talk about this also, animals are so perceptive to different things. And, you know, we talked about how Bathsheba, the dog, had died before this happened, but they did have animals at the property.
Oh, yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is the name, like the dog that was hit by the vehicle and passed away before they got there was Bathsheba.
Right. Not a common name. I think we can agree on that.
Correct. Not I don't know how common it was back then, but nowadays you would never hear that name. No. And after the Conjuring movie, no one's naming their kid that.
Right. Exactly. Or their dog, probably.
Or their dog. Correct. I thought it was interesting though. Their family cat's name was Juliet.
Oh, that's a way more common one.
Yeah. But the family cat was Juliet. And they said the cat was always withdrawn, but kind of suspicious. It's like it was always looking at something or moving or kind of doing something to try to seize something, like it knew something was there.
They did test once upon a time on different animals in supposedly haunted locations, and some of them react, some of them don't.
Oh, wow.
It differs by animal.
Well, they also said they got a puppy, and the puppy's name, again, Jennifer Rebecca.
What? The puppy's name was Jennifer Rebecca?
Yep.
All right. Well, that's definitely, like, all of these are so far from Bathsheba.
But the funny thing is, when you listen to some of these names, it's like, they were naming them like real people's name. Like mine was like Shep because it was a shepherd.
Right. Right.
You know, I had a bird named Squawker. Like I wasn't giving it like real name. Like none of my pet names for an animal would ever be Nick or
right. That'd
or
be weird.
Willie or Seth. Like I feel like the,
because then people don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was hanging out with Seth, petting him all night last night. People's going to be like, what? What are you doing over there?
You can't tell us that.
Yeah, wackadoodle. But they was naming theirs like real names. But supposedly that puppy, it was reacting very strongly. In fact, according to the family, the dog became terrified of the house and refused to cross the front hallway, which is why I think some of the stories is told as Bathsheba the dog, for reasons we're going to cover later, would never go into the house. I think they kind of took that part of the story and this part of the story and kind of combined them.
You know, funny thing about dogs is they'll learn fears and behaviors from the people they're with. So I can totally picture, and this is just like on the skeptical side of things, the dog sensing people's fear.
Oh yeah.
And it's afraid of something. It don't know exactly what, but it's
Right.
like, oh, when they're coming back to the house, they're a little hesitant.
Right.
Now I'm scared. Or like a dog, if you hurt your foot and you limp around a bit, they'll start limping around. Or, they just react like that.
Animals are very perceptive. And just like you said, they will dig into whatever their owner is digging into.
Mm.
And it's freaky. It's like they've got another sense that we don't have.
Right.
That I wish I did have. Trust and believe.
Maybe, or you'll be terrified all the time. You might be. You don't know.
Right. Could be. Maybe we'll find out one day.
Do you really want to stare into the unseen world of things hiding in the corner snarling at us?
Yeah. Heck yeah. I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, actually, me too.
Another interesting thing that they talked about is the antique clock in the house. It would stop at exactly 3:07 in the morning.
That's the witching hour, Bert.
3:00 is the witching hour.
3 past midnight.
That's right. Theirs was 3:07. And, if you think about it, like if it happens once, it's like, that's a mechanical thing. The clock is broken, whatever. Twice, maybe dumb luck.
Maybe.
Anything's possible. But when it keeps happening again and again and again, it's always the same hour and it's always the same minute. Then you kind of lean back and you go,
That's got meaning.
It's got some meaning. But I thought it was weird that it was 3:07.
Right. Well, we know 3.
Yeah.
Is like a religious holy number.
Yeah.
But so isn't 7, isn't it?
It is, but like 3 is supposed to be a mockery. 7 is considered a holy number.
Right.
So why would it be a mockery number and then like an actual religious number, like a good number?
Right. Well, imagine this. We will hear tales, and like we've heard some of it now, that there's some positive influences in the house and then there's some negative influences in the house. And I think we'll hear a little later as well that sometimes they thought the positive ones would warn them about the negative ones. So imagine the mockery and then the holy number. It's a battle of these entities.
Could very well
trapped
be
in this house.
I never thought of that.
That's just something I threw together on the fly, but would make sense.
I mean, it would make sense. I mean, to say that there's one and not the other doesn't ever make sense to me.
Exactly. And if I imagine like you're an angel and I'm a devil, you do something good. Like you push something into a good place, I'm going to push it back into a bad place.
Right.
Just to be contrary. Right.
Which is very true. Very true. I don't know. That's wild to think about. And I think Andrea, if you read her books, she started talking about how she kept questioning, why are all these different things happening? And, that question would lead her into when they looked at the history of the property itself, where the family, they kind of started looking at, is possibly the answers buried in the land before they were even there. So they started looking at the context of, okay, clearly we didn't bring whatever this is. Like whatever all of this is, there's got to be a reason for it. But, when you think about it, at this point, they're starting to acknowledge this broom is not staying where it's supposed to be staying.
Right. These piles aren't from nowhere.
Correct. The scraping noise that's happening in the kitchen, like you have one odd occurrence, then you add a second one, then you got the dirt piles like you talked about. That's 3 different things. And they always find these dirt piles in a freshly cleaned floor, which by the way, if that ghost would like to come here, that's fine. Clean this house. But then you add the clock stopping at the same time. You got the animals that's acting a little weird, which in the beginning, not necessarily uncommon because new house for them too. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Well, you've already talked about them seeing the morning woman
Correct.
and the child with a potentially imaginary friend. But when you add all these together, that starts to get a little more nefarious sounding.
Correct. So they started deep diving into what this residence was, and it was once known historically as the Arnold Estate, a property that was rooting back almost 2 centuries.
Yeah, and they had problems of their own, too.
A lot of problems. We're going to cover some of that. For generations, the land had been occupied by members of the actual Arnold family. One of the earliest families in the part that we're going to be talking about, because you got to understand, the town records was all there and it was all local history. There was 8 generations of that extended family that had lived and died on that property before the parents even got there. Again, we're talking about a house that was 235 years old. So it had been around the street, so to speak. But when she started digging into the past, a troubling pattern kind of started bouncing up for her. She was like, oh, wait a second. This land, in which I've got to be very careful of how I phrase this, but there was stories of people that was unsubscribing by hanging.
A number of them from the same family.
Correct. Accounts of children who had drowned.
Yeah.
Reports of violent deaths scattered across all the different generations, even those that did not unsubscribe themselves. But much of Carolyn's research came back from local historical records as the Black Book of Burrillville, which is what that area is known. It's like a collection of like town accounts of some of the events. But to Carolyn, she started looking at all these things and she started going, oh, wait a second. Like, this makes a little bit of sense, like when you look at it. And I think that's where Andrea kind of, I think it was in some of her books, she started talking about, some of these things because her mom really did the legwork to try to figure out, hey, is there a reason that all this stuff is happening?
Right.
And at that point, I think she thought that the land had so many different cases of life and death that perhaps the reason all this stuff was happening inside the house was due to these things, which you and I talk about it all the time. It's like some of these things are, it's not malicious, but there's a traumatic event that locks something in either residually or something just stays on the property.
Right. And depending on how traumatic it is or how violent it was, it'll still be terrifying to someone witnessing it in a house. Like it might not be dangerous to you and it might not have an intent to scare you, but seeing something like that is going to be right up that alley. Like it's still going to be terrifying for you.
Correct. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about originally too, because now when you start looking at, okay, there's these lives and deaths that's occurring on the property. I had mentioned earlier, because we talked about the long neck woman, but there was more than just one entity at that farm. One of those was known as Manny. And Manny was oftentimes seen by the children as a silent man who appeared and disappeared very quietly. He was never threatening. He never spoke. He simply was present in the background, almost like a watchful guardian is how they labeled him.
Right.
Another spirit, which appeared to April, was the one that we talked about before, which was the Oliver Richardson. Is someone that she believed had lived in the house long before they even arrived. So according to April, Oliver behaved less like a ghost and more like a childhood companion. So it kind of goes back to that whole ghostly, forget exactly what they call them, but basically like an invisible friend. They got other names for it, but basically an invisible friend. And she would talk about how it was almost like he was just a normal kid that just no one else could see.
Right. Like she didn't know the difference. She didn't realize.
Correct.
That this was abnormal.
Correct. And then the one that we started to talk about, and we kind of pulled back a little bit because I wanted to really talk about these entities right here, all kind of clumped together. But one of the presence was vastly different than these other two.
Right.
And the parents described her as a tall woman. Her body was really rigid, and her expression was always twisted in anger, like it was always mad. And the interesting thing about her is it looked like her neck was broken.
Think back to The Haunting of Hill House if you've seen that. The
Yes.
bent neck lady.
Correct. And even if you think about, what was it? I think the Conjuring movie, the thing there always had its neck kind of weird. So they kind of...
Yeah. Like the Crooked Man in the later
Crooked Man in
Conjuring ones.
that was the one for the what haunting was that? The one in the UK, the
was it Smurl or was that a different one?
nope.
No.
The Crooked Man was the one we covered in the UK. The heck was the name of it? Infield Poltergeist. That's where.
That's right.
That's what that
took
one
me
was.
2 tries, but
Hey, you got it. You got there. You got there. I didn't even get there. So, so it's kind of weird when they looked at all these different entities. The fact that she was so scared, or should I say, she was so scary looking, and the family. I mean, that would be scary to them. And it's like the other. They're not big deals. They're not someone that they're like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I would want to see a strange man in my house, but
no,
you know, and as for me, I wouldn't want some creepy little ghost kid running around either, but
right.
A woman with a broken neck walking around my house, I think I'd have a big problem with that one.
Yeah. A lot of people would have a hard no on that.
Correct. But, only later would Andrea Perron, when she was doing a little bit of thinking about everything, she believed the spirit, she thought that may have been Pruance Arnold, because that was connected to the property. And according to local legend, she had taken the unsubscribed method by hanging in the barn in the late 1700s.
Right.
So it kind of goes back to the whole thing. The Manny person, she believed was also an Arnold, I believe.
Okay.
So
well, I guess it would make sense. They had
that entire family was there, generations. Yeah.
Yeah. And fun fact about that barn, by the way, it had another confirmed death in there that was not an unsubscription. Someone wandered in there in the winter in the cold looking for shelter and passed away.
Wasn't it multiple people? I thought 2 people died.
I don't know if it was of that same cause, but I know at least 2 people unsubscribed in the same way in the barn.
Wow.
But this guy was just looking for shelter.
Yeah. Well, different day and age back then too. You got to remember, it's you tried to find what you could get. I don't know.
Yeah.
Carolyn kept digging into the past though. She's really trying to figure out like what's causing all this. And it seemed like the more she would dig into things, the stranger things would get. And it was kind of a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead for them, and I think that's what they had said, it was thin. Like you would...
Right.
Like...
They actually called it a thin place like Stephen King does.
Correct.
I wonder if they got that from there.
Maybe. Maybe so.
Never know.
Well, Andrea said that she would later describe it, she thought it was a portal that was cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. We're going to cover that in one of these sections coming up, but that was one of the things that she was like, I think that's what this is just a straight portal, which we've talked about portals. One of the theories that we had with the Wildwood, the Hinsdale, there's another property that I don't want to name because I'm not a big fan of some things I've heard, but they believe there's portals that connect those 3 properties in New York.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Like a haunted property Bermuda Triangle,
kind of
New York Triangle.
That's basically what they consider it.
I asked you when I arrived there, I said, how in the world are these places so close together?
Right. Because what we didn't know at that point was there's a third property. Well, we did know. I knew from the lady when I was at the Hinsdale house, she's like, oh, you got to go check out the Wildwood. And I'm like, oh, I'm staying there tomorrow, technically.
Yeah.
And she's like, there's another one too. And she gave me the name of it. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll check into that. And then when I started looking, they said all 3 connected.
Really?
Yeah. And then I did a little bit of research, but I really, really am uncomfortable with the owner of the one property. Just
Mm,
things I've seen. And I'm like, I don't know if I
yeah.
want to be associated with that.
I wonder if this has anything to do. I know it used to be a popular subject, ley lines.
That is a theory that is active
Mhm.
around there, or like limestone and the water and all that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as the farmhouse goes and the family, they started noticing there was a lot of different things that was felt protective there with the different spirits and stuff. But according to the
Mm-hmm.
family, the one presence that began focusing really on Carolyn, um, and it wasn't even necessarily a case where it stayed directly in the house, but it was like that one entity had more of like a personal attention that seemed to be coming for Carolyn all the time. And
Mm,
it started off kind of in a place where she became uncomfortable, but that's when she first started seeing that tall woman. That was like a
right.
position for her where she's like, you see that in the beginning and you're like, oh, wait.
Mm.
And then you see more and you see more, and it's always got that grimace. Now, the thing that I always wondered is, was the face angry, or was it a case where in that moment your face is going to grimace?
Mm.
I would assume.
Yeah. Now, is the tall lady, the bent neck lady, the same? Is
Yes.
this a progression of the same entity?
Yes.
Okay. Just being sure for anyone who wasn't sure out there.
Yep. That's the same one. And the thing is a lot of these, I think in the Conjuring movie, there was only really one entity that they focused on the entire time,
Mm,
which was Bathsheba. I mean, I'm sure someone will correct me in
right.
the comments down below if I'm not correct, but yeah, it's kind of where that one stayed, was right there with that one entity that was kind of dangerous. But for Carolyn, she said
Yeah.
whenever she'd go around the house, she would always feel like it would start getting cold, not like an ordinary cold, like, what we was talking about when those people died in the
Hmm.
barn, but she always felt like there was that cold, and then you got that entity that's kind of wandering around. It was kind of a scary thing to a degree, especially you got this grimacing woman that has this neck kink. That would be
Mm.
scary. And I think that's really kind of
Oh, hell yeah.
that's what I was digging into, because it's like, you know what? Now I think it's trying to kind of bring some more things to the forefront to
Yeah.
feed off of that more, right? Like in the beginning, it's, well, I'm going to make all these people angry at each other, and then I'm going to branch into this other part. And I think that's really when it kind of started happening.
Yeah. Then it's starting to get into the infestation stage.
Correct. Because one of the
Right.
big things was there was a coat hanger attack. Carolyn was in the
Mhm.
kitchen near the area right there, like by the doorway. And according to the family, a coat hanger flew across the room and smacked her.
Mm.
Now, I had an experience when I was at the Hinsdale house where I watched something get pushed off of a table.
Right.
And when you see something like that, in this case, it's way more dramatic than what mine was, but when you
Mhm.
see something move, that's a very different thing. It's not like, oh,
Yeah.
wait, like I see something, or, oh, wait, I heard something. This is like,
Right.
this thing can touch things. And once you know that, it's a different feeling.
Well, that's when you get out of the realm of like everyone telling you all your life ghosts can't hurt you.
Right.
And then it's like, well, if it can move that, what if it moves it 10 times faster towards me?
Correct.
Yeah,
100%.
Right.
And here's the thing. It's like, you and I, we talked about our experiences. And if you
Mhm.
remember when we talked about the Lindley Street haunting, we also did an episode on that. Remember how all the
Mhm.
neighbors was going to that house and
Right.
watching, and they would see things? Like, that gives validation
Mhm.
too. They had the same exact thing. There was a
Right.
neighbor, Miss Pettigrew,
Mhm.
and Miss Pettigrew, she witnessed enough of the aftermath to where she would talk to Carolyn, and she would kind of give a warning of her own. Hey,
Mhm.
you kind of got to be careful here. Like, this is a legit thing. Like, this isn't your imagination. This isn't something that you need to worry about. But she also said, hey, keep the lights on at night. So she gave the same
Mm.
advice that Mr. Kenyon gave.
Right. Right.
That's why I said it was going to come around full circle, because it wasn't given once,
Mhm.
but two different occasions by two different people.
Yeah. And speaking of things coming back to haunt you, so to say, the coat hanger wasn't the only incident. Do you recall another, a little bit more dangerous psychokinetic event that was claimed to have happened?
At that property?
Yeah.
Oh, there was a few. Which one are you referring to?
Yeah. The one where a sickle spun in the air and then flew towards Carolyn, but she was wearing a leather jacket, so it kind of didn't hurt her. But that's, for anyone who doesn't know, a sickle is like imagine the Grim Reaper's scythe, but
Correct.
small.
Correct.
So that's pretty scary. They said it hovered in the air, spun around a number of times, and then flew towards her.
Correct.
That's escalation. That's
big time escalation. That's not small escalation, Nick. That's pretty big.
Right. That's pretty big.
Yeah, there was a lot of occurrences that happened like that. And, you know, again, we talk about people viewing things. Carolyn was really the one that saw that woman the most. But that being said, the girls started seeing her around the house also.
Yeah.
So they started seeing it. And I think that's really where the fear kind of started kicking in for everybody, because now it's throwing things, it's seeing things are happening. You know, one of the interesting things about the Conjuring movie, because I do want to go back to it. That's what most people I think know. I think it's towards the beginning of the movie. Carolyn ends up going to one of those speech things with the Warrens. And she's like, hey, I got this thing. They talk, and then they meet her back at the house because she needs all this help and stuff. You know, that actually didn't happen.
No, they sort of caught wind of it and decided to drop by unannounced, which to me is kind of rude.
Yeah, I was kind of upsetty spaghetti when I heard that, because I'm like, man, that was such a good part of the story. I thought that was like legit.
I know. Well, it makes you wonder, because in all the movies, that's sort of how it goes down.
Right.
Like they called in. They don't just show up.
Correct. Now, here's the thing. The reason that they got there was because word was traveling that this family was dealing with a full-blown haunting at that point. So it wasn't just them saying it. Like now people around the town saying it. Ed and Lorraine had caught a little bit of noise about this and just showed up in the middle of nowhere like, hey, this is who I am. Here's what's going on. What do you got going on? And at this point in time, the parents, they'd already uncovered the long history of the Arnold estate with all the generations and the family deaths and the local tragedy and the whispers of the stories that was tied to the land. So all the history was pretty much done before they got there.
Right.
But the Warrens offered something that history had not. And that's the identity that we're going to talk about, that we've kind of hinted around. According to later accounts, the identity was triggered by something specific that happened. And do you know what that moment is, Nick?
Well, that was related to a young child under the care of one Bathsheba Sherman.
But do you know why that specific person?
I don't know why, because I read a lot more about the history of the person.
Yep.
Which I don't want to give away that much yet. So tell me why.
So I'm not going to say that this is why they chose it, but supposedly Carolyn had reported that she had felt a sudden sharp pain in her calf when she was napping.
Oh yeah.
She either sitting on the couch or something. She had looked down and she had legit had a hole, like a mark in her calf, and it was bleeding. And the best way they could explain it was like a needle, like stab wound. It's like a puncture wound. And you know, the family, they had torn apart trying to figure out, was it like a bed spring or something like that may have poked up and got him. Well, what the theory is to Lorraine, which I love the Warren family. I'm not saying anything bad.
Oh, yes. Despite what we're going to talk about later, and we've got to give the honest facts.
Got to give the honest facts.
This was not one of their shining moments.
Correct.
I like the Warrens.
Correct.
But we're gonna cast them in a somewhat not so good light, like we normally
questionable. Do. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit questionable. It's going to be based on facts. As much as I love someone, I got to base it in fact. But I think it kind of stood out for Lorraine because in the local legend, which is what Nick was talking about, there was a woman named Bathsheba Sherman, and she was accused of an infant who had died under her care. It was actually the neighbor's 4-month-old. She was watching the kid, and unfortunately, it had died to a wound caused by a sewing needle. So that connection,
or a knitting needle,
or a knitting needle.
There's a lot of contention about that for some reason.
For some reason, one of the two. But I think what the theory is when the Warrens got there, and I don't know this to be true. This is just what I'm piecing together. When the Warrens got there, Carolyn had already done all of this research. And what she found was, of course, that case that was on the land. It wasn't specifically there, but it was on the land because at one point they had a lot more land than what they had at the end of the story. But some people say that because the baby died at 4 months old from a needle wound, and now this woman has this, what looks like a needle wound, that's where she connected, and Lorraine named the spirit Bathsheba.
Right. Now, one thing I want to bring up here, and I don't know if this is the section for it or not, because we're going to talk into skeptic stuff later, but what do you figure the odds are that there would be a local legend about a woman named Bathsheba that was accused of doing this horrible thing, never convicted, by the way, never even sent to trial, overwhelming evidence against her doing anything, but there's a local legend demonizing her? What are the odds between that and Carolyn naming their dog Bathsheba?
The odds are so, and that's honestly, a lot of believers say that it's not a coincidence.
I also say it's not a coincidence, and I am a believer, but I think it is not a coincidence. But on the skeptic side, I think that in this area because I doubt they moved very, very far.
Yeah.
I think in this area that sort of like contains both their old location and their new location. Yeah. This was a well-known folk tale.
Could very well be. It could be.
And I think that local would have known that. Anyone could have looked it up. And she might have, in my opinion, influenced Lorraine.
Right.
So I'm skeptical about that bit there.
Well, and here's the thing, right? Like I was thinking about this when we was doing a little bit of research on this. It's like when you have that history about this woman that did this thing, and then, it's like everything else. The story then turns into she sacrificed this 4-month-old child and she was really a witch, and there was this and there was that. It's no different than like the story we told 2 weeks ago about the woman that all of a sudden she disappeared, and for 24 years she hid like just a few cities over. And, her husband was probably called everything underneath the sun. It didn't make it true. It's just what he was called. Well, this was the same thing. Stories grow. And in a case like this, well, now since Lorraine has named this entity Bathsheba, it's no longer a haunting. It's a story. When you put a name to something, at that point, it's a story. It's a story about a witch, a story about a mother being, challenged for control in her own home, a story about a spirit that, was going around the house and was causing all this mischief and was attacking different people and was moving things and trying to cause. So this whole entire narrative was built just by adding one name to the equation.
Yeah, that's the power of storytelling. We talk about it all the time. Like this land now, till the end of probably human memory, is going to be cursed by a witch.
Correct.
Even though we've got overwhelming evidence that all that was poppycock.
Wouldn't it be interesting if the thing that was haunting them was their dog?
Wouldn't that be weird?
Maybe the dog came back in the afterlife as a human with a broken neck after getting hit by that car.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It's the bent neck doggy.
Man. But yeah, that was definitely a weird thing. And when you give it a name like that, like it takes on kind of its own thing. Like they were naming things in the house, like, you know, obviously the imaginary friend and then Manny.
Right.
They all had names, but like this was like one of those dark names.
Right. This was a wicked entity from local lore.
Correct. I don't know. Something about when you add folklore, and especially to someone that could have been a witch based on just folklore stories, it's that's kind of gets a little scary. Now the real
people still fear the witch.
For sure. And that's the thing. People need to understand. I definitely want to talk about this part here because I think, unfortunately, there's been a lot of vandalism for Bathsheba Sherman's gravesite. She was a historical person. There was record of her that was obviously murky with the death of the neighbor's 4-month-old child, but she was acquitted of those charges. She didn't live on that property, by the way.
Right.
So
it didn't even occur there, did it?
No.
And she was a lifelong church-going lady.
Correct.
By the way.
She was a Baptist church member. But she lived near the Sherman farm. She didn't live on the farm itself at all.
Right.
So the question would become, if that's who she is, why would she attach herself to a house that she never lived in?
Right. Really had no connection.
No.
There whatsoever.
So at this point, if you think about it, the legend, it was already bigger than the documented life. She was acquitted of all the charges. She lived to a ripe old age because, again, this broken neck woman that they talk about, that they then thought she, you know, did that in the barn, blah, blah, blah. The actual Bathsheba, she died years later. She lived on for a long time, and she did. That's not how she unfortunately left. R.I.P.
There is something that is unusual. Maybe you can explain this to me better. But I saw her obituary.
Yeah.
And the cause of death was paralysis.
Yeah.
What might that mean?
I had read on that, and there's a lot of different things that it could have been. And what they believe is back then, of course, you know, if you think about anything that would have a form of paralysis, the medications back then was not necessarily great.
Right. Or the treatments for different things.
And on top of that, validating the cause of death was not always the best either. So what they think is maybe she had a form of a disease that was preventing her from movement like she would have, and she would have some form of paralysis.
Yeah. But maybe she fell and damaged her spine or something like that.
No, she had an actual disease. So it was like a disease.
Oh, she did have a disease.
Yep. Okay. It was an actual disease. Let me see if we're doing this on the fly, folks. She had an actual disease that caused her death, and they were doing treatments for it. That's the thing.
Okay.
And that's why they don't necessarily know that it was that. It could have been even been the treatments or like the medication. But their theory was that though that's what she had, technically she died at 73 in 1885.
Right.
And they counted it because of all that as natural cause of death. But it was the official cause of death. The Burrillville Gazette and local town death registered death as paralysis, which modern researchers medically presumed could have been even something such as a stroke.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Or a related complication common with elderly at that time. They said that there was no foul play. She didn't do what this tall woman with the neck thing did.
A knitting needle severed her spinal cord.
Something, right? So yeah, I knew there was something associated with that. But they also talked about somewhere where I read that they thought that it could have been something along the lines of like what was that disease where people wasn't moving quite right? It doesn't matter. But anyway,
Yeah.
they had gave treatments for that too. But it could have been any of that. Like there was, again, we're talking about the 1800s. Like if you fell over dead, it's like, well, they're 72. You know?
There's ghosts in his blood. That's what.
Correct. They gone.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But now that you mentioned it, I think stroke would probably be a very likely.
I mean, it's 72.
Cause
like
of that.
Everything was way different back then too. It's like if you have a stroke nowadays in your 70s, you got a chance. But like in the 1800s, like good luck.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have any of the anti-clotting medication and stuff like that. It's
correct.
Wasn't good.
Correct. One of the things, and this is why we mentioned earlier, the person with the neck, even though it was perceived as being Bathsheba, I had mentioned earlier, it was that Prudence Arnold. That came from Andrea Perron because she came right out years later and she questioned Lorraine if she got the identity of the entity wrong, because she was like, this was not Bathsheba Sherman.
Right.
You know, is it possible that it was Prudence Arnold that it did that in the barn? So the narrative of this broken neck person being Bathsheba, that's not at all what Andrea, who lived there in that experience and did the research, she did not say that was the case.
So unfortunately, after the movie and stuff, I think you mentioned it earlier, people have been defacing her grave. Well, they had to take the stone up and put it in a protective care somewhere else.
Right. Correct. Which is sad.
So don't go mess with that. She didn't do anything. She was a nice old church lady. Correct. She probably had a bonnet.
She may have. Now when Andrea did that research on Prudence Arnold, completely different woman. She believed that was a hostile female in her day. And supposedly there was some lore that went around even with her where they talked about, you know, she was kind of a little gruff when she was alive. And the theory was that she was gruff in death too. And that's where all that came from. But she did hang herself in that barn.
Now this aligns almost perfectly.
Correct.
But imagine I know we pushed back on the Warrens a little bit here now, but I'm going to reel it back in a little bit. If I recall, a lot of Lorraine's ability was visual.
Correct.
More than anything. So she could have seen this, heard the story of Bathsheba, and connected the two there, because she might have heard that Bathsheba hung herself and stuff like that.
Well, the other thing, and this is why I say I know there's a lot of people that beat on the Warrens bandwagon, go, oh, they was evil, horrible, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. If you believe in the good and the evil doesn't come to you typically how it is.
Right.
Who's to say that this evil entity, whatever it was, decided to give itself the name Bathsheba?
Right. Well, because there'd already be some precedence there. And
correct.
Then if you know anything about demonology, if you have the true name of a demon, you've got power over it. So now you think it's Bathsheba, you can't do anything.
Correct. 100%. So there's always that. Another name that they come up with also for this woman is Abigail Arnold, who was sometimes described.
Heard of this one.
Yeah, so she was kind of in there too. There was even like a warning piece, one that tried to alert people when something darker was near, that was kind of tied to her also. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a few different ones. Now, the interesting thing is, though, the Warrens, they didn't just investigate the house. They gave the house a villain when you think about it. Whether it was whatever this was, gave it its own name, or they gave it to them, they're the ones that put it in writing. And I think that's why there's a lot of people that, you know, kind of give them a gruff time, especially about this case too.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting juxtaposition, though, between the movie and the real life thing. So the Warrens show up there and they end up doing an exorcism.
Oh, yeah.
On the house, but that's not what went down. They did a seance.
So you got to understand this it was the summer of 73.
Hmm.
And in the summer of 73, and you got to remember, they moved in 71. So at this point, they were already 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years in. And they had been living with this every single day. They had, had all these different things happening. And at this point, now the Warrens are really into it. According to the family, the confrontation of everything came on August 3rd of 73. And what they did was it was the dining room. So picture a dining room in the 70s. But what they decided to do was this seance. And again, they had already named this Bathsheba as being whatever it is. The Warrens didn't simply choose a seance because it was cooler, right?
Right.
But according to later accounts, when they went to the Catholic Church to try to get this exorcism, the church said no.
It's incredibly hard, despite what movies might make you believe, to get an exorcism.
Well, do you know why they said no?
Why?
Family wasn't Catholic.
Oh, well, that shuts the door right there, doesn't it?
It kind of does. So
yeah,
Lorraine would later say that Ed never performed an exorcism themselves, with him and her there, because the right belonged to the Catholic priest and not to what they were deemed as was like high-end paranormal investigators. So what happened was they was in that room, and what they was trying to do was just get rid of whatever the evil was that was there. And it was kind of their attempt to make connection with whatever it was and try to clear whatever it is out. And the Perron family said that basically, and I find this funny, Andrea, they basically was like, you can't be in the dining room. You got to be. She watched the entire thing from a different room.
Right.
So
there was some results I've heard as well.
Oh, there was definitely results. We're about to cover it. Carolyn was in the property, and all of a sudden she went into almost like she wasn't there.
Trance.
She was in a trance. And she was completely out of sorts. Like there was nothing there. And of course, I think anybody, you got to understand at this point, it's just, there's these things happening. We see this scary stuff. Hey, I did have this thing poke me in the calf. It's not, people isn't straight going to another realm. Okay.
Right.
That's kind of an escalation to a degree, folks. But according to Andrea's account, Carolyn's chair rose off the ground. Not much. We're not talking like feet up into the air, but just enough. She said it was maybe like 6 inches off the ground. But at that point, the husband's like, nope.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Well, to him, it's going to look like this is getting way worse all of a sudden.
Correct.
Like,
because Roger was like, I've seen enough. Like, we didn't have this kind of escalation at all until you got here.
Her.
Correct.
You're hurting her now. Like, you're doing this to her. I see you doing this to her. 100%. I don't see an invisible woman doing this to her.
Correct. And I'll be honest, I would have probably done the same exact thing. This did not escalate to this point until you came into my house, and now we're here.
Yeah. You barge into my house on a Sunday while we're having dinner, and you give my wife seizures at the kitchen table.
Correct. So Roger sees this. Of course, Andrea later said that she had saw it from a different room, but he was convinced that it was the Warrens 100%. Roger shut the seance down and ordered that the Warrens leave his house.
Right.
So they did not separate the way the movie had it. There was no final battle. Okay. It wasn't the final boss in a video game.
That was the final battle right there.
That was it for
between
them.
Roger and the Warrens.
Correct. Because in the film, let me tell you, the scene escalated, and obviously there was this showdown between Lorraine and this witch of Bathsheba, and they had this spiritual victory. But according to the parents, like the real life story, there was no victory. There was no
that was
rescue.
The end of the Warrens' tale.
Oh, big time. Because you got to remember, the Warrens are leaving. They're still there. They're dealing with this every single day.
Yeah.
So for them, it was only damage that was done. There was no betterment. And it was interesting because according to skeptical investigators later, there was also serious reasons to question what was happening in that room. So it was actually Joe Nickel. He argued that in dim lights and during things of, panic and, maybe what they saw was not necessarily the chair that was rising up and blah, blah, blah. We're going to cover some of that in the skeptics, but Andrea Perron, I'm going to be honest with you, has always been pretty honest about it.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion. I mean, how honest can you be? You're not going to remember everything, but I mean, for me, if she said she saw that chair come off the ground 6 inches, in my book, it came off the ground 6 inches. So rattle that, whatever you want. We'll get into the skeptical stuff a little bit later, but that's a big one in my opinion. But the seance didn't end the haunting. If anything, it made it a little bit more difficult. The Warrens are now gone. I think at this point, if I'm the parents, I'm probably like, what do I do now?
Right.
Because whatever was in the house, it's clearly still there. It's not like it left.
Yeah. And now they know they can't get an exorcism.
Right.
The Warrens aren't coming back. What now?
Well, and that's the tough part because at this point, it's like the Warrens and the Perron, that's a burned bridge. You're not going back there. Roger had already forced the investigation to be done. He's like, we're not doing that. The house, it's not going to go back to being peaceful, right? Whenever there's an escalation, that escalation typically stays. Now, it might calm down with time, but of course, according to the family, which is, I know you all are going to not be shocked by this, but the activity simply kind of returned to being strange with a little bit of time that went by. So there was an escalation. It did advance, but it kind of went back to what it was. Now, the apparitions, they would still be seen occasionally. Objects continue to move in ways that nobody could explain, but it's almost like the Warrens, to a degree, ramped whatever it was up. There was residual of that, and then slowly it went back down to what it was. And there's a lot of theories that when you do paranormal investigations, that sometimes you bring things to a different level because you're interacting with these things.
Right. You're bringing in a different energy, and sometimes that's the energy they need.
Correct. Or maybe you take something from one property and move it to another, unbeknownst to you.
Yeah, that could very well be. I know we had a lot of discussions about, different entities following you.
Yep.
And and how you're supposed to be specific or explicit that they're not permitted to.
Correct. That's if they listen.
If they listen. Because honestly, it wasn't just you that said that. And I've heard that in a lot of stories when I was telling a shop worker around here where I get all my blind boxes from. The first thing she said was, don't ever tell them they can come with you. Like, that's a well-known thing.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. It's kind of like whistling at nighttime outside, right? They say never whistle at nighttime because you're going to call something. Yeah. But it's like, it all depends on if whatever it is listens. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
But after the Warrens left, the house really had a lot of stuff going on. The daughters kind of learned what rooms or where in the house to avoid at nighttime. And certain parts of the house, they did develop a reputation to kind of be a little bit more dangerous, so to speak. The other spirits, the quieter ones, they continue to stop by. Like Manny would typically make like an appearance. The young boy, Oliver Richardson, he was still speaking to April, so that never changed. And even the more benign spirits seem to kind of remain part of the strange, experiences inside the house. But the hostile presence, it also never fully disappeared. So it still stayed there kind of in the background is what I would call it. According to the family, the tall woman with the broken neck was still seen occasionally, still watching Carolyn with the same territorial anger that the parents had come to fear. So again, that went back to that Prudence Arnold and her reputation. And I think that's why Andrea always leaned towards that's probably who that is.
Reading all the data that we have, I think that's what I lean towards now as well.
That's what I would lean towards. It just kind of fits.
Yeah.
But life kind of went back to normal. Roger went back to work. The daughters went back to school. The family just kind of said, this is our life. We're kind of stuck there. They were in debt, pretty heavy from the house. And in fact, they kind of learned to live with it. It was almost like a coexistence that lasted 7 years after that seance. So 7 years of being in the house. They finally left in June of 1980, almost a full decade inside the farmhouse. They moved away and they moved to Georgia.
Here's something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
These numbers popped up again from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
3:07 on the clock.
Yes.
3 years till the Warren seance.
Correct.
And 7 years after till they left.
Correct.
3-7-3-7.
Isn't it weird how all those things just kind of happen?
Could be a coincidence, but I don't know. In these kind of cases, there doesn't seem to be coincidences.
Correct. I don't know. The daughters and the family, they just kind of moved on with life. Luckily, they was able to talk about a lot of these experiences. Andrea Perron, she graduated from high school and left Rhode Island to attend college in Pittsburgh. So that was before she was kind of one of the first ones to leave the house before they were officially out. But for the years that remained, they were still super difficult for the family until they was able to get out. So, and then if you think about it, if you're the daughters and there's 5 and now one of the oldest is gone.
Yeah, that's a protection you've lost from your younger siblings,
Correct. So I don't know. Over time, Andrea kind of understood the house. It was bigger than what she thought it was. That kind of went into the whole portal thing. But when the parents left the farmhouse in 1980, the haunting, at least for them, it was done. So it was like it was tied to whatever that house or that property. In fact, what they believe is that it was probably tied to the land and not the house itself.
Right.
So
I can see that.
Yeah, it's we talk about it from time to time. It could be a case where it's residual or maybe something that just attaches to the land. In 1987, the property was purchased by some different folks. They lived there for more than 30 years. And their experiences with the house was very different than the parents, which is what I always find interesting.
I think they call it the calm period or the quiet period?
Yep, because they said, they had some weird things like a vibrating chair, distant voices, some unexpected sounds from time to time. They really didn't have anything that major at that residence.
Right.
So I don't know. It's a very weird thing. And it makes me go back to, is it the case that there was 5 young girls in the house? And they always talk about, think about the infield poltergeist, kind of the same thing.
Right.
But here's the thing. They lived somewhere before they didn't have this, and they lived somewhere after. So it's like, is there something on the property? Like if you was to put 5 teenage girls in that house again, would there be some type of energy that would attach off of those girls? That's the question I would have.
Right. That would be like having a full stack of batteries in a device. Maybe it takes that amount of energy to bring that forth. And
maybe it's got to be something specific, like the area has to have something specific for that to truly happen like that.
Yeah, but I don't know if it is entirely that. I think it's something similar, but not exact, because I watched a lot of people doing investigations in modern times, or fairly modern times. You can't right now.
Yeah.
But they got some EVP and some events on tape that are pretty compelling.
Here's the thing. People's going to hate me for saying this, because I'm a paranormal investigator.
Right.
There is so much fake stuff.
I know.
That it annoys me, because even if it seems compelling, sometimes it's just a flat out lie.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's true.
Think about just this is a prime example, just the thing we're talking about right now. You have to dig through so much stuff to find the truth.
Yeah.
And, you and I talked about it off the podcast. I mean, this house sold for big money because of what it became. This entire movie, it was all, it came out And then this thing took off like wildfire.
What is it? 7 movies now?
It's got to be up there somewhere around there, because it's part of the Nun too. Like they're all kind of interconnected in that franchise. But the property sold in 2022 for $1.525 million.
And there was a bidding war clearly on it because it was only listed at 1.21.
Correct. And that's the thing. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. If you've not looked into the house, as far as what's going on, there's drama with it now. Jason Hawes is trying to get the residents, and it's just it's like a crazy series of events in which we would spend another hour if we talked about that too. But yeah. I do want
too many names
involved
in this. Like I was having trouble memorizing them.
Oh yeah, it's almost impossible. I do want to go into some of the skeptical believer and the fringe stuff. I know this one's running a little bit long, so we'll kind of coast through this, but the skeptics have kind of an interesting view. The house itself could explain a lot. So what the skeptics say is, when you look at things, especially when you have a house that was back in the 70s, 235 years old, like there's going to be things like, doors that's going to make noise and the walls are going to make noise and the house is going to settle, especially in a 14-room house. And that applies when it comes to logistics and everything else. Some of the more dramatic signs have a plausible natural explanation also. So one of the things they talked about is those little flies that would show up inside the house. Right. They even explained that, the winter fly infestation that Andrea Perron described is much known as something called cluster flies. Yep.
Yeah.
So, they even talked about that as being something that's explainable. The blue beam of light reported in the house has been treated skeptically as just being something possibly atmospheric or like an electrical phenomena that's occurring. And they're saying that
they suggested ball lightning as
correct,
well, which is incredibly rare, by the way. But in the places it occurs, it sometimes occurs repeatedly.
Correct. So, that's kind of their thing. The second thing they talk about is the dark history that may have been imported from the house later on. So they're saying, hey, there's all these things that's happening. Well, clearly, if that stuff's out there, people's going to say, well, this is why the house is haunted, which to a degree, if you look at what the Warrens did, not saying why they did what they did, but it can add to the credibility of this is why this house is haunted. You know what I'm saying? Third thing being Bathsheba Sherman. It was definitely for them by far the weakest part of the whole legend. Because it's kind of the thing that doesn't make sense when you truly go into the ledger of what's happening.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I think we can say about that it's absolutely proven that she's not related to this.
Correct. The fourth thing they talk about is the Warrens may have framed the entire case before the evidence did. So what they're saying is that they had an agenda. There was a reason the Warrens would have done it. The whole dramatic Hollywood story that was told was not that. The Warrens was actually tipped off by another third party. And they say that matters because it creates the emotional framing for the entire case. Psychological effects may have affected more people than what they would have admitted. That's the fifth thing they talk about. So basically, with the Warrens there, they have the name of Bathsheba. Now all of a sudden people start looking at this. Well, this is real. This is a real thing. This is a real person. This is probably what's happening. So it just kind of adds to the psychological angle. The sixth thing they talk about is, well, the later owners, they had pretty much no problems from a haunting claim.
Right.
So again, from 87 to 2019, they lived in the house with no issues.
There's a good example of how things snowball with legends and stuff like that, going back a little bit to the Warrens, and probably they heard the local legends or something from Carolyn or her daughter.
Correct.
And so it sort of just worked its way in there. Do you remember, I know you remember it, but do you remember the beginning of the Blair Witch where they're interviewing people around the town?
Oh, yeah.
One of them wasn't an actress. and they interviewed her about it, and she just made up stuff on the fly.
Shocker.
And they kept it in.
They're like, this is too good. It's too good to not.
She just pretended she knew what it was.
That's so wild. I wonder how dumb she felt when it's all said and done.
Well, they made a little bit of money off of it and a little bit of fame, so
they're not going to complain
too
much
for them.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think the interesting thing about the skeptical point of view is they basically said, you know, when you look at it, the parents invented, they didn't say like the parents invented everything. They didn't say that. They just said that it was a frightened family that had strange, intense, and deeply real experiences inside of a really old house. The history that's tied to it, it obviously is going to bring things to the equivalent, but they're just basically saying, hey, this isn't demonic. It's not a ghost. It's not some witch. It's none of that stuff. Now, the believers, regardless of what the skeptics say, they have a valid point for some of the things they're talking about. You know, the biggest thing the believers talk about is the parents never stepped away from any of this, even with the Warrens coming in to a degree. They're like, we don't believe that's what happened, and here's what we think happened. But they never backed away from any of it. In fact, Andrea herself, when The Conjuring came out, she said over 90% of this film is pure fiction.
Yeah. And I think even that's generous, probably.
That's probably generous. But it's like if you're the family and they come to you and they're like, hey, we're going to rewrite this entire thing to make it more interesting. Grab the cash.
Yeah.
Just tell the true story.
Yep.
Now, I think what happened, though, because if you think about it, this is probably one of the first major stories that was told like this based on something that happened with the Warrens. They probably didn't understand that that would have more traction than the actual story in some occasions.
Right. I think you got to add a hand for everyone who's ever touched this case.
Correct. Another big thing the believers talk about is the haunting was messy. It was long and inconsistent. So it's not like it was like most typical people lying about something. The third thing to talk about is multiple people in the house describing overlapping experiences.
Right. And that's a difficult thing to coordinate.
Correct. And the big thing is Andrea coming in, especially in the last, since the movie's coming out, correcting what was said about her supposed story. That has a little bit of an air of, okay, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, she's been consistent.
Correct. Now, the part that annoys me, and the believers are absolutely correct, the seance, when you look at this entire story, it probably is the most terrifying part that's in some realm of like, this is abnormal, paranormal.
Right.
That by itself is probably more terrifying because it's real than the actual movie.
Yeah.
The sixth thing they talk about is the family's life appeared to have been permanently shaped by the experience. So after they moved out, they still dealt with the pressure and the problems and the complications that happened after. And the seventh thing is the case. It may make more sense as it being like a hot spot, which is what you and I kind of alluded to, of being like the property versus, hey, this is just happening. So the believers are saying, hey, the movie's not right. We understand that, but this is a real family that had a real experience. There's too much to it. And that's kind of where they leave it.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that land can get poisoned.
Correct.
I'm a real believer of that. And I don't even think it's related to houses necessarily. I think it's the land itself.
Correct. Now, one of the things, which is my favorite part, is we talk about the fringe. The fringe talks about the portal theory, in which if you take Andrea at her word, well, the farmhouse, it wasn't just haunted. So it was kind of like an opening, a place where different presences could kind of come and go as they please to a degree. So a lot of times they say it wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a curse, it's definitely not a demon. It's just a location where the boundary itself, if you talk about dimensional planes, which we oftentimes do, is just unstable in that area. Another thing in the fringe is the land energy theory. So Andrea also tied the property activity to the land itself. In the same interview, she said the farm sat, here we go, on an ancient underground river and near the, I'm going to mess this name up, Nipmuc River. And then on certain days,
that's the native tribes that was there too.
Oh, then that would make sense. But it says on certain days, you could supposedly feel the vibration in the land and even in the stone walls.
Wow. I think that just even supports our theory that land can get.
I would agree. Now,
I keep saying poisoned, but almost like cursed or something.
Correct. Now, something that a lot of people don't talk about, Andrea explicitly said, and I quote, tons of extraterrestrial activity on the property.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, we couldn't really find a lot of what could have been like UFO related stuff, but there is theories that property has had some form of a unidentified flying something in the air. And then some of the other.
Was it witch shaped on a broom?
No, nope, just lights. It's always just white, just lights. But that was kind of some of the weird stuff that was being seen on that property. So I don't know.
Honestly, on a tale like this, the difference between the fringe, the believer, and the non-believer is just narrow slivers.
Oh, for sure.
Like, because everyone's saying something's going on, and it's something weird.
Correct.
It's just like, I think it's science weird. I think it's ghostly weird. And then the third one is, I think it's UFO weird.
For sure. But again, there's almost always a tie to it, right? Whenever we find a story, fill in the blank, whatever the story is, there's other elements that's always tied into it, which makes me believe it's all one and the same thing. And I believe it's probably an interdimensional something is what I believe.
Yeah, we've talked about that theory so many times. And I think from what we've seen, there's two things that we really believe in. And one is interdimensionality. I don't know what.
Interdimensional planes.
Yeah, interdimensional planes. I'll just say that. Mm-hmm. And national parks hiding something.
Yeah, there's definitely
those
some
are
stuff.
The two great truths of the deceptive reality.
There's something in parks. Don't go to parks alone at nighttime, folks.
Yeah. I guess the third one is it's not owls.
Yes, definitely never owls, even if they tell you it is.
Yeah. That's the first way I know someone's lying to me, if they talk about owls.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Where does everyone lean in the whole world of The Conjuring? I want to know in the comments down below, what do you think is the cause of some of the stuff that's happening on that property? Do you believe it's like the skeptical point of view? Do you believe it's the believer's point, or do you got some fringe theories of your own? I would love to know in the comments down below. Tell me, please. And for those of you that's always here for the end of this thing, who wants to open a blind box?
I do. But I need you to make a larger choice today.
Oh.
I got the remainder of the case, so choose between 1 and 6.
Well, we just talked about 3 being a bad number. We got to go with 3.
So 1, 2, 3?
Yes.
Or 3 here.
I mean, I guess that's probably a better one. What would be that one?
Okay. All right. The only reason there's some confusion there is because my screen is flipped.
Yeah. You guys don't know that, but it's definitely a little confusing.
Now, I am certain this time it's your turn to go first.
It is?
I'm looking at the back of it, so I don't know.
Oh, it's dang it.
Exorcist again?
Dang.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of doubles lately.
Yeah, I've got 2 of those now, 3 Wolfmen.
Well, I know for sure this isn't one that I've got. I'm doing the Stranger Things one, and I can feel this one already.
Is a Hopper?
No, I'm pretty darn sure it's the Demogorgon.
Oh, we got a Demogorgon. Oh, I see it.
Yeah, it's wow, that's significantly bigger than the other ones. Wait, let's hold him up. Look at the size of that fella's feet.
Doggone Demogorgon, man. He big.
He is big. He's a big boy.
Crazy,
Nice.
crazy.
Well, at least I didn't get a double. I've been getting doubles lately.
You're blessed there. I was cursed. Must be the curse of Bathsheba.
Bathsheba is affecting her wine boxes.
I knew it the whole time. Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed the podcast. We appreciate you being here. Until we see you in the next podcast. Goodbye.
Bathsheba bless you.